and is connecting. Hopefully it connects. It makes it'll make a new post. So that's the weird thing. Like it has some kind of thing where it makes new things. Okay, we are on YouTube, and it's saying we're testing. We're not testing for live Q&A. That's just, I hate when I had everything set up. Episode 4 and 5 with Kim Dillon. It's okay, Felicia. It is okay. It is fine. You're fine. It's just you do so much work to make something work, and when it doesn't, you're just like, I work so hard.
Welcome to life.
I worked so hard, and it's not working. And I don't know why it's not working, and I don't know what I did wrong. Let's see if we're on LinkedIn too. All right, we are on LinkedIn. This is so sad. Cause I mean, like I had the post and the icon and all the things, and then that means nothing.
We're learning.
Um,
We're learning.
we're learning. We're learning. I am going to. Uh, I am going to. We are live here. Thanks for joining. And then I had all the. I sent emails with links. That's great. It's just great. Yay. Okay. We're going to see if some people show up. And if not, then we're just going to have a cool, dope
That's actually
conversation.
a lesson that maybe it's smart to like use a bit.ly or like a link you control so that you can always update the link for technical. I would have never
Yeah.
thought that.
Yeah, this again, we're learning. And then what really is annoying is on LinkedIn it says that it's testing for live Q&A, and I'm like, but you're not testing for live Q&A. And how do I change that? And I don't think I have a way to change that. Am I frozen for you?
No.
Okay. I don't know. Let's see. It says we have 2 questions in the chat. Uh, it wasn't working for me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. We are having technical difficulties. Um, okay, so I think that chat is from YouTube. Um, and yeah, gotta love life. All right, we're gonna get started. Welcome. Who is that? Megan. Welcome, Megan. um, yeah, I might stop trying to do this on LinkedIn and just do the lives on YouTube and then repost it on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is the problem. LinkedIn is causing the technical difficulties. Okay, I'm going to go over here to my handy dandy notes because we are professionals and we do prepare even with technical difficulties. So, listen, it's all good. Kim, first of all, I got to introduce Kim Dillon to you guys. If you haven't met Kim, I feel for you because Kim is amazing. Here's what I love about Kim. Not only is Kim a marketing powerhouse, a Michigan MBA, which if you know, you know. um, she is just the dopest person. She has had a career that spans different industries, including some of our favorite sin industries, as I like to call them. and you just have a breadth of knowledge. She just launched a new show on YouTube that I hope she continues because I think it's so dope. Kim, remind me the name of the show though. I watched the show and I was like, oh my God, do this. And then I forgot the name.
You know, it is so new that I didn't even name it.
Okay, so I don't feel bad.
But I am working through that process, but I'm in a season of experimentation. And so
Amen.
what we're seeing is experimentation live, building in public, as the techies say.
Listen, but I watched that first episode and I thought it was so dope how you were like, hey, is this a good business? And then it was slime. And that slime
Oh, hey, Megan.
is a good business.
Yeah, and the last episode that I did, actually, I almost, well, two things, and then I'll let you continue. One, one of my friends watched that episode, which was just 3 weeks ago, and her 13-year-old child launched a slime business and has already made $2,500, which low key, let's switch places.
Right. Facts. Because I did not make any money last quarter.
Okay, selling slime. I was like, that's amazing. And then the last episode was really looking at non-alcoholic beverages. And originally, I thought the category was really oversaturated, but when I dove into the economics and like the whole chain of it all, I was like, oh my goodness, launching a beverage, if I was going to launch something in CPG, a beverage is where I would focus. I convinced myself.
Right, right.
I will not be doing that though. We're not building in public that way.
Right, 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 right. Right. Because, yeah.
That's a
Build,
long game, and I want short wins.
yes. I need money today.
Yesterday.
I'm putting a post on LinkedIn,
Oh, great.
reposting on my feed. Like I had some technical difficulties, but we're here. So just in case. But
Beverages are amazing. And so I think some of the dynamics that I thought was really interesting was like most of all of the brands that I researched launched on Shark Tank. So you know their financials and their margins. One, it's like an 80 or 90% margin, which is insane.
that is insane.
Two, the big companies like Pepsi, Heineken, Diageo, they buy brands versus make competitive brands.
Now, yeah,
They
well,
do both, but they are very
there was a brand called Aha, and I'll just leave it at that. I've said too much already.
aha. I've never even heard of. Was that the sparkling water?
Hmm.
I'm a sparkling water connoisseur, and I just remember that their carbonation levels just were not really where I needed them to be. I actually met the founder of what is the one that does all of the fruit versions? They
Is
have
it
like
Poppy?
they have a grape one. I actually know that founder as well, and she just sold for $2 billion last week to Pepsi, which is a big.
Yeah, it was Poppy.
And I met her during the pandemic because she actually is best friends with the founder of Tower 28. And I won their business accelerator program
Oh.
during the pandemic. And then Megan, you might know this person. There was she started off as a CBD beverage, but now she does a mushroom beverage. She launched during 2022, and it's a mushroom based brand, and she's doing 14 million in revenue just by selling it online, which I didn't even realize beverages could be sold online. I mean, I knew they
Yeah.
could be. I didn't know people bought beverages online.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a thing. And that's why when I was working at Frito, they were like scrambling because people also buy snacks online. It's very like things you buy at the grocery store, people are now buying online. I feel like the convenience one, and then two, um, just not having to interact with humans. And we are getting we this is why we're where we are in the state of the world, is because we have driven this individualism in our society when human beings were designed to be communal. And this is why we're having all these issues that we're having today. Well, let me see what Megan said. Okay,
The brand, I'm sorry, I said all that and I didn't say the brand name. It's Little Saints.
Saints.
And so
Okay.
to tie this back to your topic so we can get back into
Yes.
personal branding, is that like I met her, we were doing an influencer shoot for Cheech and Chong. Yes, Cheech and Chong.
Yes.
And we were all sitting at a table doing a Thanksgiving. We were smoking the turkey, but showing people how you could smoke with this particular bong. Um, and she brought her beverages,
Nice.
and they were mint green, which is such a odd color for a beverage brand. And
Right.
she had turned her trailer into like this she just hot glued, super glued mushrooms all over like a trailer that you pull behind a car. And that's not my brand, that's the brand that I'm talking
Right.
about. Oh yeah.
That's the brand that you were talking about. I
Yeah.
just put it up on the screen.
Oh, got it. Yeah. And so she just started pulling up to events and connecting with people. And she just networked her way onto Shark Tank, which is usually a show that a lot of people pay for, but she did not. She just hit every event. She said for like every night, she would just wear like mushroom related paraphernalia, which of course people are going to ask you about,
Right.
which would allow her to talk about her brand. And so she successfully just networked herself into Shark Tank and crowdfunding this whole opportunity, which is
Wow.
amazing. Now she has a unique value prop, but that is actually one of my tips when we get to it, is that if you're doing traditional marketing, I think one of the ways to do it is to have like a prop to sort of stand out. And I read about this in that book, Never Eat Alone.
Yes. Yes.
And he would talk
Keith
about having,
Farazi.
he would talk about having some type of prop. And a prop would mean, I think for like older women, they wear like funky glasses, or you wear a flower or a brooch or something, and that does feel a little gimmicky,
No, but it's memorable.
but
It
it
creates
gets people
the
talking.
recall.
It gets people talking, and it gets people to like remember you. I actually dated a guy who only wore red glasses, and that's how people would recognize him. And I think Seth Godin also tends to wear very colorful glasses every time he's at events. So your personal branding can actually come through what you wear. But I know we jumped ahead, so I'm gonna let you launch into what we're discussing.
No, no, no. This is good. This is we got off track because of technical difficulties. So if you're watching this, thank you for joining us. If you're watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. Hopefully you get some gems and nuggets. This is our live Q&A. To recap, we're in a series of power. We're talking about, and I have the book here. I'll show everybody. We're talking about the 7 rules of power. Every episode, this kickoff to the season 9 of the Trill MBA Show podcast is about breaking down each of these 7 rules of power. I am trying to get Dr. Pfeffer to come on the show. We will see. I don't think my podcast is big enough for him. He's busy. But I'll keep asking and see if I can convince him to care for the Black women.
Closed mouth does not get fed, so keep going.
Hey, listen. But so last week I was out of town for a family event. My cousin got married, and I missed last week's live. So we're combining episodes 4 and episodes 5. And the last couple of lives that I had, and I was telling Kim this earlier, I felt like I was just talking into the void. And so I was like, let me bring on people I know that know about these things too, and have had different experience and maybe can build and add and make this conversation more colorful and actually like have conversation, because that's what this part is about. This is about you get a chance to come on, talk to me and my network of experts that can answer your questions and help. Because at the end of the day, we are going to have to collectively come together and pool our power together and help each other and lift as we climb. Because I don't know what is going to be what, but I just know that we got the ancestors. we have the DNA in us to make it through whatever this is going to become, and we will rise, but we will rise together. So I say all that to say that's the whole point of me going live every week. So if you're here, Megan, thanks for coming. Invite your friends, go tell people, come ask questions. Let's week by week, let's figure out how we iron sharpen iron. That's the whole point of me doing this. And so I have my little talking points here, but I think I said what I wanted to say. We're holding space. That was the other talking point that I wanted to make sure I said. We are holding space for us. Also, this is an interview, it's a conversation. So drop your comments, your questions, and anything that you've been thinking about since the last 2 episodes. If you have listened to them, if you haven't, it's okay. We're still going to have this discussion. The 2 rules of power that we're talking about today, number 4 is to build your personal brand, build a powerful brand. And so in that episode, I broke down that your personal brand is your narrative, right? I think a lot of people get caught up in personal brand, this phrase, it's in the zeitgeist, and they may look to certain people on social media and be like, oh, wow, they know how to do personal brand, or they have a personal brand. But then you really don't even know what their story is. You just know that they've shown up and they talk. And maybe you know something they talk about, but what would you tell somebody about them? And so when it comes to work, personal brand isn't just how you dress and how you show up and what people think about you. Personal brand is, what do they say about you in the calibration room? What do they say about you in the break room? What is that narrative? And a lot of people believe that they can't drive that narrative, but I need us to rethink that. And that's what, to me, building your personal brand at work means, is how are you driving your narrative? What narrative have you created? So it's not your title. It's not your resume. It's the story that people say about you or tell about you when you're not in the room. And we talked about 3 keys to driving that. Crafting your narrative, or your power statement, is what I call it. Being seen in the right circles, and show up consistently with the same story every time, because consistency builds your personal brand. Consistency drives your narrative. So, Kim, my question to you.
Uh-oh.
What do you think in your career has been your personal brand and your narrative? What do you think it is? And is that different than what you want it to be?
I think the through line of my career has always been working on innovation. So I've always worked on like what's coming next. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty true to what I want it to be. And I think specifically it has really been focused on marketing and branding. Having a strong personal brand myself, but then also building really amazing brands. And that's always been true, even though some of the brands I've worked on in the last few years have been more prominent. Mm-hmm. I have had people know about brands I've worked on like 10 or 15 years ago and still talk to me about them. And I think the common thread is storytelling. So to wrap that all up, it's innovative storytelling in a brand building world around how to talk and brand what's new. And what we might be thinking about that is, how are we driving the conversation around space? Or how are we driving the conversation around AI? Or how are we driving the conversation about what comes next is what I'm really excited about and what I've been known to do.
I think that that is correct. Like, from what I know about you, everything you said, that's what I've heard. So my question to you is there anything that you want to add to it, or that you want somebody to think differently?
Not necessarily. No, not
Okay.
really.
And so I wish I could say that. Here's the deal. Because I'm Felicia Ann Rose Enuha. And what that means is, or what I would like for it to mean is, I do dope shit. That's what I would like that to mean, that and I get shit done. Um, Unfortunately, what it currently means is I'm an executor, but that gets put to the side. What is said about me in context of career is that I am going to ask the questions that shouldn't be asked, or I'm going to say the things out loud that most people know not to say. I think I'm known as more of a troublemaker and a rabble rouser than I really am, actually. That's the sad part. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not really. Um, and it's always um, more when I was junior. Now I've gotten better, right? At getting the cues and knowing how to navigate myself, me and my personality, my big old personality. Um, but yeah, it's like, I think what I would change about my narrative is that she's trying to do the right thing. Felicia's always going to try to do the right thing. And so I think with that,
Can I push back on that though?
go
Because I
ahead.
think what you're describing is your values and your personality versus like what you do, like what is the value that you bring to the table per se, or like what is it that you actually do? Because I think being a rabble rouser can be great, but what does that inform me of like what you're doing? And then doing dope shit, like expound on that, like that's also like a value. So like what is it that beyond that, like if we drill that down, like what do you want to be known for, or what can one expect from you?
What that means is I'm gonna get it done. So like doing dope shit, I can launch a new product or new SKUs, add to a line. I can do it in 9 months, where it's supposed to take 18 months. So I can do it in half the time. Um, Doing dope shit, I can get creative done under budget, right? I've just been able to do those things because I build great relationships with my cross-functional partners, and my cross-functionals always love me. My issue has always been with leadership because
Yeah.
I say the things. I call things out, right? And I've learned though, because but human behavior, people do not like to be called out in public. So no, Felicia, do not get up in the town hall and ask the question.
Yeah.
Even though it's what everybody's thinking and everybody wants to know and everybody needs to know in order to go do a better job. It's, you don't have to be the one, Felicia. You don't have to be Katniss in these corporate streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have learned. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, because it's just to what end? What are you trying to prove? What is stop it? Well, we have somebody says, Butter HP. I must say, I love these names from YouTube. I spoke to someone yesterday and asked them what they thought was distinctive about me, and he said that I question the status quo and I'm data driven. I was proud in one sense, but a little scared too. Yes, because questioning the status quo can get you dinged. And so you have to learn. And that's probably a better way of me saying instead of rabble rouser or, well, there's, how do I say this? See, this is the problem. I be running my mouth and then we're live. And so it's better when I'm not live. But since we're amongst friends, you two are consortium. Let's just say I heard through the grapevine that someone, ha 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 up, said that I was a shit starter.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of was like, yeah, and because I'm asking for this organization to be the best it can be, to be greater and better. And I'm asking for alumni programming so that we can collectively pull our power and have jobs. I'm asking for us to create power in this organization to help all of us have better careers and be able to have money to give back to the organization. So if that deems me a shit starter, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's an interesting blurring line between one's perception of your abilities and your personal brand. And I've never really connected how people perceive me at work and my personal brand, because my personal brand, I think, surpasses my work perception. And I'm also coming from, like, my career has been very entrepreneurial and across industry, so I'm trying to think back to, like, when I was, like, in a big corporate company, how people perceived me. But I even would say that my personal brand there was that, like, I'm always talking about what I'm interested in, regardless of what I'm actually doing, and adding to it. So I see my personal brand more as like my interest and the spaces I'm pursuing, more than necessarily how people perceive me as a worker. I've always just been interested in, like, trends and innovation, and I'm always bringing that to everything that I'm doing, so that when people are talking about, like, new product development, etc., they'll be like, Kimberly would be interested in that because that's what she's always talking about. But then as we're talking about, like, my reputation, which is
Yes.
different to me than my personal brand, because like, my reputation, I would say, is that I am the personality hire.
I disagree with that, but go ahead.
But in a good way, in the sense that I'm one of those people who knows what everyone is doing, what everyone's working on, and connecting the dots. So even
Okay.
if personality hire might have a negative connotation, I think people generally know that I'm going to know what everyone is up to and how to connect those dots. And I would say my other reputational thing, which I think is a part of my personal brand, is I have never really been just about my function. Even though I've always worked in marketing, I am a great partner to engineers and product and finance. And I know, probably above being a partner, I'm just really curious, which I think is a value that I possess. I'm curious about how other people do their job and what their work is. So I know more than I need to about modeling, and more than I need to about QA, and more than I need to about this, that, and the third, just out of curiosity. But that have served me well from a reputation perspective. But as it relates to a personal brand perspective and networking with others, I've always been very vocal about what I'm interested in, and I'm very loud as it relates to talking to people. So even in a corporate setting, I remember when I was working at Clorox and I was on barbecue sauce, and everyone's like talking about like the traditional brand management pieces about it, but
Hmm.
I went deep into barbecue culture, and I was the one who was sharing the articles about, did you know white barbecue sauce is popular in Texas? Who are the people who are behind it? Like really bringing life and enthusiasm. And that's what I mean by the personality hire. Like we are going to have fun if you work with Kimberly. Like it's going to be
Right.
fun. We're going to get the shit done. She will do whatever it takes to like get the thing done, but it's
Hmm.
going to be light and fun. And that is the what I would put the values on top of what I deliver, which is innovation. Those are some of the brand values. I'm sure I have a lot of negative values because, girl, what is a budget?
Girl.
I've never cared. Obviously, like it's gonna get resolved, but it's like definitely not something I'm stressed about. Let's say. So I am sure there are negative things that are like performance review type things, but I don't care. Like I don't care about, and I think the best advice I got from a manager was she was like, you're always going to have weaknesses. Like just focus on like what you are really good at. And what I'm really good at is connecting the dots, connecting people and thinking about what's the future? Like how are we getting to the end destination? So even if you are a disruptor or a rabble rouser, like it is what it is, but like let's not lead, like not even in this conversation, like let's not lead with negative talking among your friends. Like what are like the positive things that people say, and let's focus in on that. Even just when we talk to ourselves of like, if you are an executor, like, and you get things done,
Yes.
let's lean into that. And it was like, you know what? I'm really great at operations. I'm really great at being an operational thinker in everything that I do. I accelerate businesses, or I really help businesses stay on track. I'm about efficiency. I'm looking about efficiencies across categories. Like, you have to hype yourself up, even in like amongst friends, so that like we're planting seeds so I can remember what's the seed. Because I often even tell my friends when they like, here's a job that blah blah blah, and it's like selling, like, I don't know, something boring, and I'm like, do I look like I want to work on boring traditional industries? No. So they're always planting seeds of like, what does Kimberly want? What is Kimberly into? Like, what gets her fascinated? Like, I'm
Hmm.
always educating people about me.
And this is that's the nugget of building a powerful brand and creating and driving a powerful narrative. And I'm glad you called me out because hey guys, listen, I do this not just for y'all. Like I learned too, right? Like I'm in a lot of ways still in this learning process of how to show up and how to show out. And I'm glad you called me out on that because you're absolutely right. Something you mentioned a little bit earlier, though, that I kind of want to unfold a little bit more is this idea of focusing on what you want, what you're good at and your strengths. And I think as you're crafting, if you're using the tools that I'm creating, as you are crafting your narrative with those tools, and you can find those freebies, I'll drop the link in a second. Um, as you're crafting that, you really should get focused on what is it that you really want. And I think that's one mistake in my career that I made. I never really was like, what do you want to do? Because had I had I asked myself that when I was younger, I probably would not have a career in marketing, to be honest. Um, I probably would be doing more of this stuff, content creation and thinking about, how I can create the things tell the stories I want to tell and create the things I want to create, because that's what I'm more passionate about, more interested in. And how I can help people, because I've always wanted to help people. I was that little kid. I was always tutoring my classmates and like staying after school helping the teacher erase the chalkboard and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, so I would be finding things that allowed me to help humanity be better, be better to each other, and not inflict trauma on each other. But I think because I have had this career in these Fortune 500 companies, and I've been subjected to certain things, I think my life has taken this path for a reason. And that hopefully now, as I'm continuing to grow, I'm also helping people by sharing the mistakes and the wins that I've made in my career, and bringing people on like you, Kim, who, your the way that you've managed your career is inspiring to me, because you focused on these are the things that I'm interested in, and not, oh, I gotta follow this path in life and work for these companies and get these companies on my resume and do this and do that, because you just have a more enriched experience in life, and eventually you're going to have to get to the place of what you were designed to be. And I think because you are curious, and because you have honored that about yourself and allowed that to unfold, and sure, you worked in cannabis, and sure, you've worked with these, entrepreneurs and beverage brands and all these things that you've worked on because you were curious and you were having fun. And now, not only do you have some great stories to tell, but also you have, through that, driven a narrative where people can help you do more of what you're good at and more of what you want to be doing, which will lead you
Yeah.
to happiness every time.
I thank you. I think that, to go woo woo in supportive of your tools, it's important to know who you are. And I love a little assessment, right? And I've loved them from like the beginning of time, whether that's human design or your Enneagram or your Myers Briggs or your strength finders. Like we've done your horoscope, the
Right.
Chinese version, like all of it. Like I
Right.
love a personality test. I love risk, like, and I also am I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that this path would work for someone who really loves stability. I have a really great friend where like she's not curious about the world. She wants to stack paper. She wants to do
Mm-hmm.
the same thing every day. Like she does not want any variance, right?
Mm.
I've always known that if you took me to Vegas, it's either going to go great or horribly for Kim Dillon. Okay. Time and time again, but that is my personality. And I know this is a value that like I'm willing to risk it for the biscuit.
Okay.
But that is not the personality for other people. Also, I have no dependents. No one's relying on me. So
Fair.
my ability to take risk and to play this way is different. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure if I had people dependent on me, that I would take a different path. But then again, as it relates to like the branding and the persona of myself, risk taking is a part of it because it is true. And when I think about personal branding and narratives, it's really understanding your values. I actually teach this as a class for the undergraduate business students at the University of Michigan. And one of the really big pieces of it, it's like what you do, how you do it, but also your values
Mm-hmm.
and what you want to be known for. Like, for example, I almost never want to be hired for a serious client. I'm an unserious person, right? Like I'm not going to get hired to like work at the military. Like it's not
No.
going to happen. So knowing that, I can lean in harder for what is available to me. And I think sometimes people want to appeal to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary to be super niche but I do think that the riches are in the niches. The
Mm-hmm.
niches.
Yeah, riches are in the niches.
Yep. And knowing for myself, because I do value showing up authentically, I'm
Mm-hmm.
a casual person. So I need to be in casual spaces where I can be however I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important to building your personal brand is who am I attracting with my materials, with where I show up, who's in my community. When I look across my peer group, and your peer group doesn't necessarily need to share your same values,
Mm-hmm.
but people who activate for me are not the most serious people on the planet, right? Like serious people find me irritating, which is fine.
Right.
Um, and so, but I note on your paper, one of the things was being in the right groups.
Yeah.
One of the ways that like I keep my network and being in the right group is I'm actually in community with these people, right?
Mm.
I have often invited people out for either a happy hour or event. Like people know me, and that might not be a strategy for some people because they're a little bit more private,
Mm-hmm.
but I know people in my network and I know them in a way that isn't like just your job. And
Right.
that's driven by I'm a curious person.
Mm-hmm.
And my very first job, which was at Accenture, which is a very serious company.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. I got that job on a plane talking to the guy next to me who was like a partner at Accenture. And he was like, I'm going to give you a job. And I was an unserious person. And he was just like, oh no, even if you're unserious, I was debating between working at an agency. No, I wanted to work at an ad agency, which still low key, I think I would have had more fun.
Yeah.
But he was like, just do 2 years in consulting so that we can like take some of the, what did he describe? Looseness away and like get some like foundations in you. And that literally happened from a plane. My second job, I wrote the CEO and I told him everything that was wrong with his website. When I got into cannabis, I made a marketing plan and just wrote it to someone. And I was like, can we go for drinks? And we went to like, I think we met like 3 or 4 times before I ever got hired. Like I've always just reached out to people and been in community with them actually before, I've asked for something.
But also, yeah, you showed your value. I want to point that out, and I love so one of the rules of power, the second rule of power, blah, the second rule of power is breaking the rules, and you just demonstrated how you broke the rules and how that works for you. You know what's funny? I'm sitting here and I'm not a jealous person, but there's a little envy, little jealousy that rose up for me, and I'll explain. I somehow along the way convinced myself through whatever outside influences I was allowing to in myself to internalize that I had to follow the path. I had to go to school. I had to make my mom proud. I had to get a good job. I had to do, then even in business school, if you want a job, you got to do these things. And I see this in my cousin. I'm going to call him and have a conversation with him. He's 20 years younger than me, but it's this need to prove I belong and need to prove or show that I fit in this system, and because this system is supposedly there's this reward at the end that I supposedly should strive for because that'll make my mom proud. Like the whole thing, right? It's a lot to unpack. But in this moment of listening to you say, I had this conversation on the plane and I was just myself and I was just being curious. And then this guy offered me a job and I was like, why not? And I'm like, I want to be like that. To me, what I heard you explain to me is freedom. That's what I heard. And that's what I want for people. I want us to get out of our own way. I realized like part of this book, the reason why I focused on this book and getting power is because when I started reading the social science and the research, it just brought me to this place to realize like I've been doing my career life all wrong because I've been trying to please some phantom of expectation of what I was supposed to be instead of trying to figure out who I actually am and become who I am and more of who I am. And what I hear you saying is that you've innately been doing that your whole career.
I wouldn't say innately, but thank you for that. I'll take the compliment. I mean, I think we are a product of our environments, right? And so my mom hates corporate America. My mom's an artist. She's like a rebel. Like she does not care about any of the, when I went to business school, she literally cried. So there is like the opposite energy happening here where my mom wanted me to have a really creative life. And in some ways, I actually could see how a more creative life would have been more fulfilling and probably a better talent. So I think we are always sort of rallying against expectations and what we should do. And I wouldn't be too hard on for either of us is that, you know, there is something about foundational parts of life. Everyone needs to work. And most people aren't going to love work in the beginning. And we have probably 2/3 left of work in some way, not necessarily like paycheck retirement type work, but the way that we contribute to our society type work. Because I've also never really seen work as just like my job, but just generally like, how do I add some kind of value, whether I get paid for it or not? Kind of like a portfolio of work versus like my career. Like this, I'm talking about something bigger than my career. And I will always be working, but I don't mean like I will always be showing up to get this job.
Right.
And I think it can ebb and flow. And in some sense, I'm really grateful for all of the jobs that I've had, even though I don't think I was great. Like I was the worst consultant on the planet. But I so value that experience and that framework because I can make it my own and use it for myself. But I hated every second of that job. And I was also, I mean, I'm very self-aware and I know when I am not winning. And I would sit at work in a project where I was like, I have no idea what's happening. Like there's blackness. I'm not accessing information the way that everyone else is, what's going on. But I can have an appreciation for that learning experience. And everything is a building blocks. Even my time in cannabis, some of the things I've learned have nothing to do with work and has everything to do with like how to survive. These people that I met are some of the most resilient people. And I was so afraid of every rule. I'm surprised I even worked in cannabis because didn't even smoke before I started working there. Like I just thought something was going to change because of legalization. Like I was just fascinated in the rule change, not because I loved weed.
Right.
And when I met the people to work in cannabis in those early days, you have to believe in, you do not even care about the federal government. Like you do not believe in rules and you have spent your whole life evading rules and not caring what society thinks about you. And so I worked with some of the most resilient people who really did teach me about like rules do not matter. And it was also the first time I was around super, super wealthy people in which rules are really just like a parking ticket.
Right.
And so it really gave me a lot of confidence, regardless about like the day to day job or the whatever. It was really more like, oh, this is how you have a point of view, regardless of what the government says or what your parents say or what, like stoners are really isolated people.
Yeah.
So I really did learn a lot about standing up for what you believe in. Because personally, and I don't even work in the industry anymore because I was like, where is the money? These people who still work in it really believe in something greater than themselves. And that is so admirable. But most people are never going to have that. And that's fine.
Right.
And so I
Yeah.
think the balance of if you really want to have a purpose driven life, that's not happening in corporate.
Baby, if that ain't a word.
Because purpose is shareholder value.
Yeah, that's the purpose of a corporation. Yeah. And I, as we talk about like, what do we want our personal brand to be? I think one, start with who do you want to be? What do you want to stand for? What do you want your purpose to be? And those are meaty questions, and you need to take time and sit and meditate and contemplate and write some things down and write some things out. And although I feel like I have done those exercises, I feel like I need to go revisit them again, especially after this conversation, um, because I am trying to figure out now for myself, how do I pay bills, take care of myself without corporation, without a W-2 job at a corporation, which is something that I haven't done in my adult life. And now is the time. And it does involve being self-aware, which that's something else I, you meaning you people believe they are self-aware, and we all still have our blind spots. And this conversation made me more aware of some more blind spots that I have about myself. Right?
I could offer an idea that I've recently been exposed to that I really love.
Yes, please tell the people. Tell me.
It's called, I think it's called a portfolio career. Anyway, it's a woman on Substack. I'll have to like look up what her name is.
Yes,
But it's
send me her
an
stuff.
idea, but the general premise, and there's also a guy named Greg Eisenberg who does like startup ideas. But what's really interesting, the parallel is that they treat their work, which is greater than job, as like a holding company. And they have sub brands underneath that. The reality of it is that like a lot of times you are going to need a job that pays the bills. And so the brand that you need for a 9 to 5 job should be consistent with the holding company, but doesn't need to be the master brand, right? And so I think how you show up to be employed from a company doesn't necessarily have to be how you show up for yourself entrepreneurially or your greater work. And so I don't want the conversation necessarily, and I wasn't implying that this is where you were going, that like you have to change yourself to be entrepreneurial, to do something for yourself, or that you have to be different for an employer brand. Those are just two different audiences with two different functions in your life. And thinking about a holistic personal brand, master umbrella, but also thinking about other ways that you want to show up where different elements of your brand pop more than others. And so maybe being, a rabble rouser in the 9 to 5 brand, we can bring down, but being a rabble rouser as you coach people, we can bring up. And so figuring out, when do I talk about these things on which platforms, but I think trying to be all things to all people on all platforms at the same time
Yeah, and even
creates chaos.
yes, and as business people, right? And as marketers, we know better. You cannot your if your brand is trying to be something to everyone, it is actually being nothing to no one, right? So, yeah, I'm and at the end of the day, what I'm learning is what it comes down to is, do you believe you are enough? No matter how smart you are, no matter how many degrees you have, no matter what companies you've worked for, experience you've had, do you believe you are enough? And I believe people who believe in themselves and believe they are enough just as they are tend to operate differently from people who feel like they've got to prove their worth outside of just existing.
And I would say I agree with that. And I would also say even if you don't feel like you're enough, do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because I like one of my weak spots is like I love a start, but I don't really love the middle part. I don't like the
Right.
finishing part, right? I just love starting new things. Um, but I have to override myself and my instinct. And so just because a conversation in my mind might be that I'm not worthy of this or I don't, I still have to create gravity and physics of force to like overcome that. So sometimes I think for myself at least, I can get caught up in the like, well, I need to work on this and I need to work on that and I can't do this until I do that. And, you know, and it's like, I need just momentum, right? I just need to start
Yeah.
and then get the momentum to keep going, even if I don't feel
Right.
like it's going. And the way that I try to remind myself is like, it doesn't even matter if it's work or anything. There's no one to prove worthiness to.
Facts.
Like
Those
you
are the facts.
can't. It all is a facade. All of it. All of
Yes.
it.
Yeah, but it's a lot of people out here pretending. And I think one of the things I love about some of the stories you've shared with me around, being around the wealthy elite people is how, you can, they're insecure. They're just human beings. They're
So
flawed
human.
human beings.
Yeah, even Beyonce was like, I get nervous and anxious. Um, and you try to imagine that, but it's like, yeah, but she is human. Like what human would go into a huge stadium and not feel like a little bit of anxiety? Like, let's be freaking for real.
Yes.
Like, we are humans, we are not robots.
Yes.
You're always wondering how you are being perceived, and I was going to say the president, but not like our whatever. Like
Not
even
that
when you're
thing.
at the top of an industry, you still don't really know if this is the best decision. Like people, it's just human.
Yeah.
We are just humans. I think the difference, if we're talking success in a corporate on the top way, because I think success can mean lots of things, but if we're talking about you know our current patriarchal capitalistic society success is your brand is armor. Whether or not your brand is accurate of what you deliver, you just say that you can deliver and you say the right things and you have built a brand and a reputation for doing those things. Plus, you have a network of people who are both your peers and above and below who are bought into this idea of you.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a personal brand, but if you don't have the buy-in, it's also kind of like a mess. But whether or not you can deliver is another story. Personal brand just gets you in the door, but you
Mm-hmm.
do have, well, actually, for some people, they can brand themselves while in a job completely failing.
Listen, and that's one thing I have told my clients, my coaching clients. I was like, look, the problem is we are hardest on ourselves. Just like you told me it from the beginning of this live, right? I was already in the headspace of beating myself up because of technical difficulties, and I thought I had everything set up and figured out, and I feel like I did something wrong, and so here we are, and just having to own it. But then you telling me like, and I'm in that headspace. And so then when I'm asking myself, well, I feel like this is what people say about me when I'm not in the room and blah, 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 and I don't like it, but fine, and you're like, why don't you tell me what you do? Why don't you, let's put a positive frame on it, right? And that's because I am my own worst critic. And I think a lot of us are our own worst critic, and we don't understand how that comes out. Whereas you have a people who work in corporate who I don't know if they're able to criticize themselves, but like everything they do is great. And when they fail, they're like, oh no, this was the greatest learning lesson ever. Like that's how they spin it, and everything is just wonderful and everything is great, and then that becomes the reality. And so like even the biggest example is this fool posted online talking about everybody can be rich after the stock market is falling apart, and he's like, let's go get rich now. I'm like, sir.
But both things can be true. Some people are going to be rich and some people are not.
Right.
And
And
both are true.
yes, I think though, to tell to
I would say that brand is contrarian, which I think unfortunately is really popular right now.
yeah,
To
it
go
is.
the grain because you get a lot of comments and engagement, and you get to steal mind share by saying something ridiculous, like you're like read the room. But not reading the room though is actually a great branding strategy. Like that, if you can contain that, because I've actually tried to lean into contrarian strategies, but sometimes I'm like, I'm too much of an optimist to like really stay there.
Right. Because you got to be consistent with it.
Authentic for me.
Wait,
But
say
I
that.
do think if I could pull it off, I would do it. And I say that shamelessly.
Yeah. But I think you have to be consistent with it. That's the problem. And so if that's not your natural default, it's kind of like you
I
kind
always,
of have to be crazy.
unfortunately, so I can't be in the like, everyone's coming for you. Like, I can't be that oppositional because I don't have that personality. But I do think for digital personal branding, I do think going against the grain is one of the best ways to stand out, unfortunately, in our algorithmic society.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't lean into that if you can't pull that off, because best does not mean
Right.
best for you.
Yeah. And I wouldn't lean into that if you're risk averse, because you're gonna lose some things. Like there's gonna be a lot of people, you're going against the grain. There's just gonna be a lot of people against you. And if you aren't comfortable with that, then it's gonna be painful. But
And
if you
your audience too, like, because then
yeah.
you're attracting people who are against the grain as well. And then you're like, damn.
Right. What have I done? Oh my goodness. I totally went. I had to. For me, I just let the spirit lead. I feel like I got more out of this than what I've given. So thank
Don't
you.
even say that. know. I feel like I'm turning into like all of my therapist talk. I'm like, you don't know what I got out of it. You're projecting.
It's fair. I I just know I got a lot out of this. Then, and I mean, for people who are watching now or who will watch the replay, I'm like, this was great for me. I got mine. I don't know if you're gonna get what you came to get.
It was a great conversation, and yeah, I mean, it was really valuable to think about things, to get it out of your head and think about like, actually, what do I actually think about this? So it's been a lovely conversation to think and reflect back and be like, okay, was there a strategy?
Yeah, and I know for me, my career strategy before probably 2018, um, when I got laid off for the second time, my post MBA career. Um, I think my strategy was get a job, make more money, keep trying. That was my strategy. Like I have no idea what I was doing. I was just like, I just gotta make money because I had a sick
Yeah,
parent I needed to take care of. I
yeah,
had, family that I wanted to do for, and like it was like I went to business school to make money. That I was trying to be the CEO because the CEO can have the influence and power to try to make things better for the rest of the humans that work in the building. So I wanted to be that person because I wanted to make life at work better for people, but at the same time I wanted to make a lot of money. So it's like you got to get to the top. That was it, and there was no other real in-depth thought. I never asked myself, what do you really want to do? Because this, what you're saying and what you're doing is informed by everything outside of you. But what inside, from the inside out, what do you want to do? And now in the past few years, the pandemic really has made me be like, okay, wait, what are you doing? What are you really doing?
yeah. And I think it's separating your personal narrative from your job.
Yes, because that was I people would say like you aren't your job and stop trying tying your self-worth to your job. And it wasn't until this most recent layoff almost 2 years ago, and and then I couldn't quickly get a job, and the job market is what it is right now. I don't know what it is. And I started feeling the sense of I'm not good enough, and oh my god, I think this is it and the end. And like I went through all those emotions to come to the realization that I am not anything that this corporate stuff like this doesn't mean what I thought it meant, and it doesn't have any reflection on me as a human being, as a person who can deliver value to my friends, to my family, to my podcast audience, to people I work with. Like you being unemployed doesn't take anything away from that. And so it's taken me, this has been a journey. And I'm okay being honest about it. I think some people be like, why are you telling these people this and you're supposed to have a career podcast? Because we all gonna learn.
Yeah,
We gonna learn together.
yeah. And I think that, like, I just want to touch on one last thing is that, what I see from you is a storyteller and as someone who's really focusing on telling stories to different audiences. And whether or not you're getting paid for it is irrelevant right now. And I think that there is an opportunity to do that and combine the marketing and the general management skills that you have. You don't get a stamp saying you're a storyteller.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
That's never gonna happen. If you got a job that is like a podcast editor something, would are we treating that as a stamp to say, oh, I am doing this? Like this is what you're doing now. And if you were doing whatever job, accounting and you want to be a storyteller, well, then that is the personal brand and narrative that you want to be known for. And
Right.
not like I've had some jobs even recently when my British job, startup job, I didn't tell anyone because I was like, I don't really want to be associated with this industry or
Right.
anything, even though it's actually a pretty sexy industry that people, but I was like, this doesn't fit the narrative of what I'm trying to convey, even though it was a fine job. Like it wasn't even a bad, it's actually a great job. I made the most money I've ever made in my life and I still didn't tell anyone
Right.
because um, it wasn't part of my brand.
Right. Well, we have a question from the audience. Do you believe that Trump's reciprocal tariffs will improve job chances in the long run? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how it could impact job stability. Thanks. Um, no, because companies, well, I don't know about the long run. It's hard because all I see is the short term ripple effects are going to be a lot of layoffs, a lot of cutting costs, and then inflation and prices going up because the reciprocal tariff we're gonna pay the people are gonna pay, and they even said there's gonna be this short term pain that we're gonna like they set us up for the child. And I think that I mean in the long run we're gonna vote these people out. We're gonna get angry, we're gonna be mad, we're gonna be unhappy. We do it, it's cyclical. We do this every time. And then we get rid of those people and we put people in who say they're gonna change the policy and do something different. Then those people try to do something different. Then we get mad because they're not doing it the way we want it done or fast enough or whatever. And then some loudmouth person comes along talking about make America great again. And then people fall for that okey doke. And then they put Beelzebub back in office. Like it's cyclical. We've done this over and over again. All I know is at the end of the day, if you believe you will be okay, you will be okay.
Yeah. What I would say on a macro level, and I don't know what industries there are, but if I do believe that this is the direction that we're going to be on for a while, and since the question said long term, I guess what I would be curious about is what industries do I believe would be supportive of protectionism? Perhaps that would be the auto industry. I don't know what industries would actually make this investment into the United States, but that's where I would look to be like, what are the reasonable industries that would come back, and when are they making those investments, and would I put my efforts going after that? Like for example, and I don't know the full details, this is just like illustrative.
Right.
I know that a lot of the AI companies are powered by data centers, and so they were building a lot of data centers in Taiwan and all of these other places. And now, because a lot of these CEOs are trying to be part of our current administration, they want to build the data centers in the United States. So then, if I had a job function that whatever related to these types of data centers, well, then yeah, I would try to figure out how to position myself into something where investments would benefit your job. And so I think, and I know the follow-up question about Biden or Kamala, I just think that if we think about our career and our personal brand in long terms, it has to thrive no matter what administration is in
Right.
office, and also what inflationary recession things are happening. We have to think from a broader perspective and understanding the political landscape. And so I don't know which industries are going to benefit from protectionism.
Right.
And I also think that protectionism type industries take a really long time. So I would imagine that the really where you'd want to be is like at McKinsey or BCG or whoever the consulting firms are that would figure out and sell you on the dream.
Right. Yeah, I feel like they have a way of surviving, right? Because they posture as solution service. Like you got problems, we got solutions. And that's what they sell, right? And there's
Yeah.
always problems.
Are like a GE, like companies that focus on infrastructure, perhaps, because all these factories and things would have to get built.
If we are going to actually
If,
move manufacturing back
if
here,
that's the question. So that's the bet you have to make is like,
right.
if, um, understanding like what types of minerals are raw inputs that we need to pull these things off. So maybe that's like working in places that support commodities. See, this
Yeah.
is why I can't be a contrarian, because even in the face of like some sketchiness, I will always be like, okay, so how are we gonna
But that
how
speaks
are
to
we
your
gonna
resilience though, right? Like
maneuver? So I imagine commodities, right? Because like for these data centers and these factories, like we are going to need more resources. So supply chain management, I would imagine, is going to have a huge turn, like to turn off the supply chain from all these countries we support on and figure out how to navigate this. I imagine that space is probably going to have a
yeah.
boom.
And then there's a follow-up question. Do you think Biden or Kamala would have been doing a better job if they were in charge from the start? It seems like both have different approaches. I'd love to hear your feedback. Aaron also wrote, totally agree, but don't you think that Trump is genuinely trying to improve the lives of everyday Americans? His policies like tax cuts and tariffs seem aimed at boosting American jobs. So I'm biased because I did not vote for Trump. Um, I will say, from my perspective and my lived experience, um, there's a guise that he's genuinely trying to improve our lives. Um, but if you're really trying to improve lives, you don't massively lay off a bunch of government workers with a wrecking ball. There's more research, there's more thought, there's more time put into changes because there seems to be no understanding of what the ripple effects are from the decisions, the quick decisions you're trying to make to trying to show that you have power. Everything, it seems, from my perspective, everything this current administration has done is to shore up their power and prove that they are powerful and to follow rules of power, whether it be the 48 laws of power, the 7 rules of power. But if you look at social science, everything that has been done, the chaos, the vitriol, the manner in which it's done, it's not really about the American people. It is about being in power and having control and getting out of getting a free out of jail card, right? It has not been about what is it that will create and stimulate our economy, reduce our deficit, make us stronger, create better allies and alliances so that Russia doesn't come and take us over, or China doesn't continue to have an advantage over us in different ways, economically and socially. So I don't see these policies and tax cuts for the rich and as policies that actually help me, not rich, everyday human being. So I don't know. I don't see this person as dear. I see Trump as very unserious and like he's trying to make TV. Like it just always seems like he's trying to make a reality show out of our government, out of the United States. So I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, for myself, I would say I'm always trying to figure out like what does this mean for me
Yeah, what does it mean for
versus
me?
what it means in general. And I guess if I was to see so I'm trying to play contrarian to my own worldview. And so it's like, okay, where do I think would benefit? Now, this is an industry that I actually am interested in, even though it is shady, which is crypto. I do think that crypto is going to be an industry that is going to benefit and crypto, I think often people are thinking about it from a money perspective, as in the coins.
Right.
However, crypto is more than that, right? It's really
Yeah,
around the
it's about,
blockchain, and I think there's
yeah.
a lot of interesting things that could happen on the blockchain, and Trump is very supportive in that one very small sliver of an industry, very supportive of crypto. So perhaps that is a space. I did have an NFT moment in 2002, and I know that a lot of the communities I'm in are actually really aggressively hiring, and I'm very but that's such a small sector
Yeah.
compared to like the federal government. And I think in the short term, I do wish that there had been a more gentle way of providing stability in people's lives. And I'm wearing a contrarian hat because my father is deeply Republican and my mother's deeply an anarchist. So I try to have a balanced perspective. But I do think if you really want to be supportive of American jobs, it is making sure that there's a very clear ramp down process for people, right? Where if you would have come, and I appreciate that you are really like pro-American, Erin, and I could see that. And I don't want this conversation to be like into politics. So I
Yeah.
think we've
Cause
answered the question and we can move on from there. Um, but I do think what I want for, and this has nothing to do with politicians, because like let's be real, I think that we didn't just get here overnight,
right.
and I think both parties have done
Girl.
damage in this way, in the sense that like if we think about like in the early 70s, it was companies were treated as like stakeholders in our society, and so they were really regulated and really we were very pro labor. It was definitely like where companies cared about their community and their workers, or at least they were forced to from societal pressures and governmental pressures. And I think when we allowed companies to even really truly be global and have a stakeholder to all these countries, and to sort of be treated as human, but like to have different tax write-offs and all these structures, I think we've let shareholder value be like paramount for companies, and they have so much money they can just pay fines to get out of things, where like how we regulate and cause harm to them really causes no harm. Like even for myself, if you're telling me I could pollute in a river and I pay 1% of my revenues, then I'm gonna pollute in that
In the
river,
river. That's just and it'd be a tax write off.
right? And so I think we've had a lot of tech companies who have insane margins that are just sitting on billions of
Billions of
dollars
dollars.
so that they can do whatever
Whatever
they
they
want.
want.
And so I do think both parties did not really set up the American worker for success, because the American labor doesn't have anyone cheerleading for them. And
Right.
I also think we just don't expect as much from our corporations in the way that we used to, that you have to be a good civic partner and also a financial institution. And I think until companies and institutions have to show up in a civically minded way, I don't think it really matters which administration. Like the labor has no power.
Right. Yeah, labor has no power. I would say, Erin, if you have any questions about career management, that's like, yes, I studied American government and politics undergrad. That's what my degree is in from the University of Texas at Austin, but that was over 20 years ago. And politics have changed, and I, you know, will what happens politically in this country affect how we work and how we go to work? Yes. But what I want to focus on is what's in our control and what can we do and how do we show up at work in order to get our best possible outcomes at work. So if you have a question about a sticky situation at work or navigating the workplace, then yes, please ask your question. But if it's about the administration and politics and that stuff, like I I don't want to say I don't care because that's not true. I'm a U.S. citizen. I care, but for the purposes of this platform that I'm building, I care that people are able to go to work and create stability in their career in order to thrive in their life. That is what I care about
And I
most.
think specifically for today, we were talking about
Personal
personal.
brand and building, yeah, and building your personal brand. We were also supposed to talk about networking, but I didn't realize like you can't really talk about the two things in 1 hour. Like you really got to focus. And also you just dropped some great gems and nuggets today, Kim, that I am just like, oh no, we're going to talk about this. This is what we need to talk about because the spirit was moving, I felt like. And I hope that when people, either the people who are watching this, thank you for joining us today. And again, I am working to be a resource for people who are trying to navigate the workplace. And it's tougher now, right? Because we've had all these layoffs. And so what people don't realize is when there's like all these layoffs and companies are making all these human capital cuts, is that you, if you don't get cut, you still go through the trauma of being the survivor at work. So like whether you get laid off or you get to keep your job, it feels very lose-lose situation because the people who are left to pick up the pieces now are doing double, triple, quadruple the amount of work because they cut all those people. They didn't, just because they cut people doesn't mean they cut the work. Still trying to deliver shareholder value. They're just trying to do it with less human capital. So we're all struggling. I know so many people who have jobs right now and they are suffering in their jobs because there's just not enough people. There's way too much work and not enough people. So, yeah.
I think that's where your personal brand and your community comes into play because when you're in situations where things are really tough and you've got to have potentially need to have options either like in the next couple of months, you want to tap into your network and be known to them before you need them and to already, be sort of out there making those connections and maneuvering because to your point, if there are seasons of layoffs, it often becomes miserable for who's remaining, and then it's figuring out like how to navigate what that means for you and get that next opportunity. And that's where having a strong personal brand really does come into play.
Yeah. I'm going to answer this one question because I think it's a good question about navigating career. How do you recommend navigating the management of a rude colleague? I'm trying to figure out the best approach to handle someone who consistently crosses boundaries without escalating the situation. So here's quick answer to managing a rude colleague. Number one, distance and separation. Number two, never react. And that's the hardest one because we're human beings. We're reactive. We are emotional creatures, but you have to have the mental fortitude to not react when there's rudeness. Boundaries are acted, they are not stated. So also the third thing, never state your boundaries. You follow your boundaries. So for example, if people are emailing you in the middle of the night or, after core business hours, and you have a boundary that you don't work after core business hours, or you don't answer emails after core business hours, or you're not going to go back and forth on Teams after core business hours, then don't be available. But you don't have to sit there and say, I don't, you don't tell somebody, don't ping me on Teams after core business hours. There's no need for you to say that. Like, that's you trying to control what somebody else's behavior or actions are. And that's unnecessary. And that creates conflict when you don't have to. What you need to do is just not answer them when they ping you at 9 o'clock at night. Don't be available. And then if they ask you, like, hey, I pinged you last night, like you didn't respond. And you say, oh, it was after core business hours and I sent you an email this morning if it was something urgent. Or if it's not something urgent, I saw it this morning and I'm working on crafting a response. And that's it.
How would you do that if they're rude though?
Um, Deadpan matter of fact. Like, because if they're rude, like you can't change their rudeness. You just separate and put distance. And then if they're rude, then they don't get what they want right away and immediately, and they can let them go escalate it. Let them be the one to complain. You just stay in your job and your excellence of doing the work, and you focus on the business and what the business needs, and don't get caught up emotionally in their rudeness, because rude is subjective. Because what if you say, hey, you're being rude, they're going to say, what do you mean? I was just stating facts. That's how they're going to, talk about it. And so at the end of the day, you just need to play it straight and stay focused on the business and let them be rude and match energy. So if they want to call you out, you would say, well, I was just responding how you responded. So were you being rude? If you're going to call me rude and I'm just mirroring you, but don't complain, do your job and act out your boundaries. Don't state your boundaries. And don't take it personal, because if somebody's being rude to you, that they either constipated, not getting loving at home, they're going through some things that you can't see. So give them the grace that you would want when you're having a bad day and keep it moving, because their rudeness isn't about you. They don't know you. They don't know you. They think they might know you, but they don't. Because you're who you need to be at work. You're not who you truly are at work. And that's the answer. What about you? What do you think? How do you handle somebody being rude to you at work?
Oh, I'm the queen of shade, so this has never really been a problem. um, yeah, my tongue is fast. Um, and one thing that like is a good trait about me, but also it's something I am trying to work on, is that I definitely always have, I don't ever mean to do this, but I have people who really stand up for me on my behalf, because I'm always just very vocal about it, but in a very like, why is this happening to me kind of way? Like, why is Jonathan always so rude to me? Like, I'm just really trying to do my best. Like, I garner sympathy pretty easily. And I try not to think about it from a manipulative way, because that's never my intention.
Mm-hmm.
But I look back on it, I'm like, why? I get sympathy when I'm not asking for sympathy a lot. So I do wonder if it's just like built into my personality, because people are always like, oh, Kimberly, don't worry, I got you. And I was like, oh, I didn't.
Right. I was just talking.
I was just rambling about it. But I think because I always bring lightness back into it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really ever, if someone's going to be rude to me, other people are going to probably step in because I I definitely have never been rude to other people, and if
Right.
anything, I'm always extra kind to
Yes.
people so that people reputationally, it really looks bad on you to be rude to me because I'm extremely empathetic and kind, almost to a fault to others. But to your point, I think the term in therapy world is called gray rock. And it's for people who are dealing with narcissist or malignant personalities, where people who feed off others, they need your energy. So the idea is to be a gray rock because we don't notice gray rocks.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an allegory to what you're saying about like just be a gray rock where it's like now we're just in a completely transactional relationship. It's just, there's just no energy exchange here. It's just very matter of fact. And they'll have to find somewhere else
Else.
if
Exactly.
if this truly is like a narcissistic kind of malignant kind of issue. Some people are just rude. But I've never personally worked somewhere where everyone was rude. So we
Right.
were all kind of in on it together of like what's
What's up with him?
wrong with this person and that person. But again, I think this is where the personality hire game comes in.
Right.
You're not gonna be rude to me.
No. No, you're not going to be rude to me. And for me, I think that's how I coach people how to handle it. How I feel like I would handle rudeness now. I like to ask clarifying questions because I know that grates on people who are trying to be rude. So I act like they're not being rude and I just must have something that I missed. So I'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. What did I miss? Oh my goodness. So help me understand." And I make them talk more than they want to. And I get in like, so I look at their personality type. And that's one personality type. They want to be rude and like dictate how the interaction is going to go. So then I overly nicely, and now annoying. And I do that on purpose. So that's one way I would handle it. Another way I would handle it is, and most of the way I would handle it is, I'm gonna be matter of fact. I'm gonna be super professional. I'm gonna smile. And then I'm just gonna look at you crazy. And then if there is a question in your rudeness, I'm gonna answer the question for the business. And I will say, well, based on what we need for the business, here's your answer. Okay, thanks. And then I'm gonna walk off. Right. So I'm going to gray rocket, I guess. I'm just not going to match your energy or give you any energy. So it just depends on the person's level. Are they above me? Is this my manager? Because then I have to handle that a little differently because this is somebody I have to interact with more. Is it cross-functional? Is it a senior leader? That all depends on the approach I would take. But it's going to be something to where they're going to look like the asshole and I'm not. And that should always be the point.
1,000%.
Yeah. And that's where we will have to talk about networking relentlessly next week because that's where building your relationship wall comes into play. What you just talked about where everybody's like, "Oh, Kim, don't worry, we have you. You've built your relationship walls." So you want to build that wall against that rude person so that everybody knows that it's not you, it's them. And a lot of times that rude person isn't just rude to you. They're rude to everybody and everybody does know. So if you bring the positive energy and you be the light and you be the personality hire, and I'm glad you reframed that for me because I saw those TikToks and it was always this girl who's not doing anything. And so I was like,
there is an element to that. But there is truthfully, it takes a lot of work to know what everyone is working on and to connect dots and know things. I can't be doing that and hitting budgets. Come on now. But I do know how I do deliver. But for me, personality hire is like I just also know how to read the room. I'm also the defender when people are rude to other people, and I am fiercely defending anyone who works for me, like
Facts.
overly. So that also helps with the relationship wall as you framed it, where it's if even if you don't work for me, actually, I'm always like, how do you feel? Are you okay? I just saw this microaggression towards you. Like,
Yeah.
so I think I've established that I really care about how people feel. And so I think that also kind of comes in with being the personality hire, where like usually people aren't coming from you because your currency is feelings and making people feel
Yeah.
accepted and wanted and valued.
Yeah. And that's so important. So, all right, Kim, I have monopolized an hour and 40 minutes of your time. I appreciate you because we were supposed to do this for an hour and we then got down the rabbit hole of questions and great conversation. So I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and gifts. Where can the people find you? If people want to connect with
Yeah.
Kim Dillon, where can they find you?
At kimdillon.com.
Awesome sauce.
Yes.
She got her website. Hey. And
Yeah.
then what are you working on these days?
I am building in public, so I am working on either a video or podcast series. I'm playing with platforms, but really exploring business ideas and trends. I think I'm going to land on Substack, to be honest, but that's a discussion for another day.
Okay.
But I really want to help people navigate how they want to leave corporate America and start businesses and start or buy businesses actually are being engaged in being entrepreneurial in a way that isn't jumping off of a cliff.
Yes, because I was pushed off the cliff. I didn't choose to jump off the cliff, but I definitely was pushed, and I landed and I broke my leg. So I'm trying to mend.
Well, hey, the body is a great healer.
Yes, yes, it will heal itself. It will be fine. And so is there any particular type of clients that you're looking for at this time?
I tend to focus on people who they want to birth a creative or a novel product. So it's not really around service entrepreneurs or people who are interested in consulting or freelancing. So this is you have a vision for how to make the world better through a product and need help on how to contain that idea or to think through how do we launch something into the world. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not service, but if someone wants to launch like an accounting practice, I would not be
Yeah.
valued because that doesn't excite me. What really lights me up is when things are new to culture or new to society, or there's just like a brand new innovation that you want to bring to life. That really gets me jazzed up.
What's a dream startup you'd like to work for right now?
I wouldn't say it wouldn't be a startup, but like
Okay.
working with like Serena Williams or whoever is the next athlete that comes with a ton of money and a ton of distribution. So
Okay.
those two things, they have a lot of influence and they also have money and want to build authentic businesses. So like I would hate to work for a celebrity that wants to launch a skincare brand.
Right.
Like who cares?
Oh, but you would be great working with Coco. Did you see Coco Goff with I think William Morris helped her, but she's launched her own agency to manage her own brand and business and the things that she wants to build. And when you said that, that made me think of Coco. So hey, somebody, if y'all know Coco Goff and you need a powerhouse innovator to help you with the new things that you're going to bring forth in the world, hit Kim up.
Yeah, and that's good. That's a good tip. I might figure out who she's repped by
Yeah.
because this is how I'll sign off. I have slid into many a DMs. I am not afraid to reach out to a stranger. And I think that is why having a personal brand is really helpful, because wherever they go, they're going to have a sense of who I am when they see whatever platform I reached out to them, whether that's Instagram or LinkedIn or even cold called. There's a digital breadcrumb, as it were, to kind of know what I'm about.
That's what's up. Kim Dillon, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you if you're watching the replay. I'll be back next week. I will talk about networking relentlessly. Secret, not so secret. The episode 6, actually, I scheduled it wrong. So it's actually out live on YouTube. It'll be out tomorrow on all your podcast players. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for watching. If you have questions, put them in the comments, put them in the chat. I'll be watching and looking to answer your questions. You can also email me at ask@trilmba.com. We're here to help. Use this as a resource and be great in your career. So until next time, keep it trill, guys. Yay, I did it. We did it. Yay. Woohoo.
Now,